I spent 3 years working as a doctor, but I was working illegally in one of the biggest hospital in JOBURG, and no one ever caught me. Today, I am living a comfortable life in Germany, but when I think about what I did, I was trying to hustle and survive. To survive, I did and hustled. I was hustling for real. I arrived in South Africa. I had basic biology knowledge and I had a degree, but I could not get a job. I came from Nigeria. Out of desperation, I paid a South African man 15,000 rands so that he can forge a medical license for me, fake transcript, and a clean background check. When I applied position at a hospital, I was terrified, but to my shock, when I went there, the HR verification was more like a joke. They did not even look at the papers before putting me on the emergency ward roster. As someone that had basic knowledge of biology, I started to study at night. The first few months, it was purely terrifying. I survived. Do you know how I survived? I relied on my phone and I had this other medical app, and I used to look at what other senior doctors were doing, and I would always be friendly with the nurses as if I wanted to know more clarity on some of the basic procedures. I dodged surgeries. I passed off some other diseases to other specialists, and I focused entirely on my routine, things that were very hard. So, ironically, because of my big character, the patients, they loved me because I was patient. I listened to them. When I would be listening to a patient, I would be busy taking down the notes, and then I would look on the internet. Back in those days, there was no you asking ChatGPT, but you had to manually search across thousands and thousands of websites. So that is how I would prescribe basic treatment that actually worked, but there is no one that died. So there was one night when I was called out to a critical trauma patient, and when I was supposed to go there, I could not fake it. There was a senior doctor that stepped in just in time. I collapsed. I lied that I was not feeling okay, and I collapsed, and then I returned back home. I then said that I wanted to retire. I had made so much money. I had money, and that is how I booked a one-way ticket, left South Africa forever. Right now in Germany, I am working a very safe job. I'm no longer involved in the medical field. But whenever I think about it, sometimes I laugh at myself because of the pure scam that I did when I was in South Africa. But I want to thank God that I never killed anyone, because what I did, it is not good, and I am sorry for what I did. But I am living proof that you can do whatever that you want. If you really want to become rich, there are ways and in which you can legally acquire your wealth, like what I did. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to us by our brother right there. Strange things indeed they do happen in this world. Can you imagine? You're going to a hospital, you meet a fake doctor who is very friendly, and you think that he or she is a real doctor. Let us talk about this in the comment section.
So let's talk about this. In 1861, Nigeria was colonized by the British, right? In 1901, Nigeria became a British protectorate. Up until they received their independence in 1960, meaning Nigeria was colonized for 99 years by the British people, and they laid down the fundamental infrastructure. They built, some hospitals, they built some roads, they built some schools, they built some cities in Nigeria, and in 1960, Nigeria became independent, and that's where they took over, everything in their country, right? Now, fast forward from 1960, to 2026, everything in Nigeria is in a dire state now compared to back when they were colonized, which is why Nigerians right now are busy asking to be recolonized, right? They are asking for British people to recolonize them because they say there's nothing working during their black government. Nothing is working. Hospitals are collapsing, schools are collapsing. Schools are in dire situations. They have they don't even have clinics in Nigeria. They only have hospitals, and their hospitals are not even in a level of clinics in countries like South Africa and Namibia. So now when you have to think about this, Nigeria's economy right now is no longer in top 5. Nothing is working in Nigeria. And when we talk about countries like South Africa, Nigerians always say everything in your country is built by the whites. Now, I know we have a government that is not competent enough as well in South Africa, right? But if you have to compare our government with, the governments of other African countries, you can give our black government a raise. I'm telling you, you can actually clap hands for them if you happen to compare them with, black governments in other countries. Yes, they did not build as much infrastructure as, the apartheid government, but the apartheid government only did that for white people. It only did that for the people who were classified as first-class citizens, not for black people, not for colored people, not for South Africans, but for white people who were settlers back then. Now, our black government came in and expanded that infrastructure to black communities. That's why right now we have infrastructure in almost each and every black community. We have good roads, we have water, we have electricity, we have things like parks, we have malls, we have almost everything right now in our communities, even in our rural areas, right? Now, you can judge our black government as much as you like, but when I was growing up, when I was about 5 to 10, people had to move, they had to travel from my village to go to Johannesburg just to get a job. There were no jobs here in my village, But today, I'm telling you that there are factories in my village. There are malls in my village. There are warehouses in my village. There are hospitals in my village. Jobs are being created each and every day. There are lodges. There are B&Bs. There are hotels in my village and close to my village. Now, these are the things that the government made possible. I'm not saying all of these things are owned by the government, but all of these things wouldn't be here if the government never laid down the fundamental infrastructure that is needed in our villages for all these businesses to see an opportunity to come here and run their businesses, right? Now, in Nigeria, things are just not happening that way. And whenever things are not going well in their country, they always want to accuse South Africans of having everything being done for them by the whites. The whites are no longer doing anything for anyone. The whites are also crying with the blacks in South Africa because of an incompetent government. But it's only incompetent when you compare it to European countries. It's not incompetent within the landscape of Africa.